Thank you. Yeah, I enjoy doing that. Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Horsham Planning Committee. I am Councillor Len Ellis-Brown and I will be chairing this committee meeting. I shall be supported by the Vice Chair, Peter van der Boer, and the professional officers. Thank you for attending, and may I remind you, members of the public, that this is not a forum for the public to ask questions or challenge the points raised during debate by officers or members of the committee. You must not engage with the members or call out during the meeting. If you've requested to speak, you will be invited to do so, and it's important that you keep to your allotted time. This will be monitored and I shall prompt you to conclude your comments as we approach the end of your allotted time. Your comments and discussion points must be relevant to the application the committee is considering. We're not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if you hear the alarm, please make your way to the nearest exit, which is at the back of the chamber, and we meet outside the Lind Cross Public House. May I also ask members and members of the public, please switch off your mobile phones or other electronic devices or turn them to silent. And remember when speaking to turn the microphones on, and when you have finished speaking, please turn them off. Freudian slip. I was probably thinking about yourself, Councillor Lim, but never mind, let's move on. When members are voting, please make sure your arm is clearly raised so that we can accurately capture the votes. I also remind members on the committee you cannot vote on applications within your ward. I also remind everyone here this evening, please show respect to one another throughout the meeting. Most especially as this is being live streamed, please refrain from any personal comments relating to the officers or members of the committee or members of the public. Before we proceed, could the officers here this evening please introduce themselves, starting with the officers on my right.
Nick Pettifer, Senior Planning Officer.
Good evening, Emma Parks, the Head of Development.
Good evening, Claire Brown, Principal Planning Solicitor.
Good evening, Monica Balaj, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you very much. Item number 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence and notification of substitute members. Do we have apologies for absence and are there any substitutes?
We received apologies from Councillor Dennis Livingston and Councillor Clive Trott. Therefore, Councillor Hannah Butler and Councillor Warwick Hellewell will be substituting.
Thank you very much. Item 2, minutes for the meeting held on the 16th of December. Do you all agree I can sign these as a true and accurate reflection of the meeting? Thank you very much. Declarations of members' interest. However, there's no need to record that you're unable to vote on an application within your ward, as the officer and myself are aware. Are there any declarations of interest from members of the committee? No? Good. Thank you very much. Item 4, announcements from the chair. Well, there will be one announcement from me, which hopefully it won't be applicable this evening, as we don't anticipate that the meeting will go on beyond 3 hours. But if it should, and I hope that it doesn't, then we will have to take a vote on whether we wish to consider beyond 3 hours. Nothing from the Chief Exec, so moving on to the first application, which is DC 250894, land to the west of Shoreham Road, Smaldole. Please could the officer present the application to committee? Thank you.
Thank you. This application is made in outline only, with all matters reserved except for access, which is to come off the A2037 by way of a new Belmouth junction. Pedestrian access alongside the new Belmouth junction would also create new sections of pavement along the western side of the carriageway, linking up with the existing pavement to the north by Newhall Lane and to the south of the existing footpath, which leads into the village shop and post office and other village services. The proposal is for up to 45 dwellings, with a 35% proportion being affordable, equating to 16 dwellings. The application site is 5.45 hectares in area and adjoins the Smaldole built-up area boundary. The site lies within the parish of Henfield, and as you can see here, the edge of the South Downs National Park Authority lies some 220 metres to the east. I'll just find my cursor. There we go. The wider context of the site is shown on the plan, and I've tried to indicate the direction of the sloping site, which is higher to the northern side and lowest in the southwestern corner. These photos show the open nature of the site, which slopes from the northern edge down to its southern edge, where it adjoins the vegetated boundary alongside a watercourse. You can see the line of the vegetation along the southern edge, marked roughly with a red squiggle, and the elevated downs in the background. The proposed development would be focused at the southern edge of the site against the backdrop of vegetation. Oops. Sorry, just go back to that. This is the northern link to Newhall Lane, which is to become a non-vehicular access point to the site. These photos show the site's frontage along the A2037, which includes screening along much of the site's eastern boundary. The indicative master plan shows the proposed development located in the southern quadrant of the site, providing 2 local areas of play, pathways around the open space, micro allotments and sustainable drainage features. As this is an application in outline, the development parcel would be secured under the parameter plan, but all detailed matters in relation to landscape, appearance, scale and layout would be secured under future reserved matters applications. This is the BNG Habitat Creation Plan, which would secure the biodiversity net gain on site. These viewpoints have been provided by the applicant and show the likely landscape impact arising from the development in relation to the elevated views of the South Downs. The submitted LVIA shows the full study, but I've picked out key viewpoints for the presentation, including across the site from the northwestern side towards Truleigh Hill in the distance in the top left-hand corner. You can see the massing of the proposed development indicated in red. And this slide shows the site seen from Truleigh Hill as of the present time, with an estimated at 15 years from now, with landscaping features matured in the distance. Officers recognise that the site lies outside of the Small Dole built-up area boundary and has not been allocated in either a made neighboured plan or local plan. Furthermore, the Henfield neighboured plan remains in date until June 2026. The development would be located within a defensible boundary and adjoins the built-up area edge, with the development focused along the lowest point of the site against the backdrop of the vegetated watercourse corridor, thus minimising the impact on the landscape setting, including that of the national park. Officers consider that matters of flooding, landscape, trees and BNG have been addressed and clarified during the application process, with the height parameter plan restricting development to 2 stories. The full planning balance has been set out in the report at paragraphs 6.131 to 6.132. The site is sustainable in that it adjoins the established built-up area boundary, is close to the limited facilities within Small Dole and a bus network, and can provide safe and suitable vehicular access and improved pedestrian access facilities as assessed by the local highways authority. In recommending approval for the proposal, officers would advise that there are no adverse impacts identified which significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessing the NPPF as a whole. A recent development arising from the applicant's interaction with housing providers has led to potential for delivering 100% affordable housing on site. Officers acknowledge that this would lead to a loss of CIL receipts, but that there are benefits to the delivery of an additional affordable housing quantum on the site, which would outweigh the loss of CIL revenue. However, at this stage, the application is to be determined on the basis of a minimum of 35% affordable housing, with the flexibility to deliver the 100% affordable housing captured within Section 106 agreement. So just to reaffirm, it would be proposals to be determined on 35% policy compliant level of affordable development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now invite the first public speaker of this evening, and that's Lorraine Johnston. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Lorraine Johnston and I work for Waits Developments. Thank you for allowing me time to speak. As you may recall, I addressed this committee twice over the summer in support of 2 carefully prepared applications, both of which you approved. Waits remains committed to bringing forward well-considered plans for high-quality homes that help communities thrive. This evening, I'm presenting another thoughtfully designed proposal, which I hope will again earn your support, as it has already received positive feedback from your officers. Our proposal in Smalldole is a result of collaboration and engagement to reflect local aspirations. From the outset, we have worked closely alongside your planning officers to ensure the scheme aligns with community priorities and policy. We've met with both Henfield Parish Council and Upper Beeding Parish Council and local residents to listen and respond to their comments. Importantly, your planning officer has recommended this scheme for approval, and the site was deemed a sustainable location for new homes when it was allocated in the Emerging Local Plan Reg 19. Our proposals prioritise people and nature, with over 70% of the site being transformed into public open space, with a foraging trail, micro-allotments, 2 play areas and a circular walking route. The development would deliver 24.82% biodiversity net gain for habitats and 10.12% net gain for watercourses, as well as enhancing ecology through bird and bat boxes, consistent with aspirations in HDC's draft council plan of creating nature diverse places for people to live. This is a fossil fuel-free, net zero, carbon-ready development with heat pumps, PV panels and EV charging points, sensitively integrated to meet the climate emergency head-on and adhere to the Council's own climate ambitions. Connectivity and safety have been designed in partnership with the County Council's advice. We have provided a new 2-metre footway along Henfield Road, linking directly to bus stops and local facilities. We have dropped curbs and tactile paving at Sands Lane and Newhall Lane to enable safe, inclusive crossings. To reduce car dependency, there will be an electric car club vehicle, which will also be accessible to the wider community. And each new household will receive a £150 sustainable travel voucher to support bus use, rail season tickets or cycling. As set out in the officer's report in paragraph 6.123, the proposal would meet the identified local housing needs by delivering a sizable contribution to the supply of market and affordable housing. However, this application represents a chance to deliver more than just much needed homes. It provides significant open space for the community to enjoy, respects neighbours and responds to the climate challenges we all face. It has been carefully considered, recommended by your officers and informed by engagements from residents and parish councils. By supporting your officers and approving this application, you'll be demonstrating your commitment to creating places in Horsham where people and nature can thrive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to invite Councillor Jill Perry. And Councillor, you have 5 minutes. Thank you. You need to turn the microphone on, Councillor. Sit.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jill Perry. I'm a parish and district councillor for Henfield. This application for 45 houses in Smalldole is contrary to the Henfield Neighbourhood Plan. Councillors may not all be fully aware of the unusual situation in Smalldole, where the boundaries of the district wards and Henfield Parish are different. The northern part of Smalldole is in Henfield Parish, but not in the Henfield District Ward. Consequently, although this application falls within the boundary of Bramber, Upper Beeding and Woodmancote District Councillors Ward, the Henfield Neighbourhood Plan applies. As a result, I have an interest in this site as a parish and district councillor for Henfield.
Councillor, could you speak closer to the microphone that's on, which is one on the left-hand side?
It's moved now. The other one, this was on before.
No, that's okay.
Thank you. Before joining the parish and district councils, I was one of the team developing the Henfield Neighbourhood Plan in 2017 to 19. We were advised by Horsham District Council officers and external consultants. It was a long and detailed process of research, consultation with residents and informed decision making. Many local people gave time, thought and effort, and 90.5% of the community supported the plan at consultation. As a member of this working group, I feel a personal obligation to protect and uphold the decisions in the Henfield Neighbourhood Plan, and of course my view is also informed by my current role representing Henfield residents. Through the neighbourhood planning process, Henfield renewed its memorandum of understanding with Upper Beeding Parish Council for the two parishes to work together to avoid over-allocating housing to Small Dole in our two neighbourhood plans. It was acknowledged that Small Dole was at risk of having more than its fair share of housing, as two parish councils were operating and assessing options within the village boundary. An agreement was reached that Henfield undertook to allocate employment sites in its Small Dole area, and Upper Beeding led on the housing allocation. Upper Beeding Neighbourhood Plan picked an alternative housing site through its processes. But the site currently under consideration, just south of New Hall Lane, being outside the built-up area boundary, was not allocated in either neighbourhood plan. Previous applications were refused for this reason, and also for concerns on the harm to open and rural landscape, lack of local services and reliance on car use. Small Dole has limited infrastructure and less than adequate public transport connections. It could be impacted adversely by a large number of new dwellings above those agreed in the two neighbourhood plans, without significant mitigation. This is only an outline application, so we have no firm reassurance how transport links might be improved. Of particular concern to some residents who've contacted me personally is the lack of a safe cycling route from Small Dole to Henfield, ideally starting close to this site due to its proximity to the Downs link. While the design and access statement briefly mentions enhanced cycling access at 3.1, reassurance that future contributions to genuinely useful cycle routes may be welcomed, ideally referencing the local community's newly created walking and cycling plan. Henfield Parish Council objected to this application, especially because it's not a nominated site in the neighbourhood plan. I hope that this position will be respected by district councillors voting on this committee. Please note that a large number of residents, some from Small Dole, voiced grave concerns at Henfield's Plans Advisory Committee about this development's impact on wildlife, countryside views and impact on neighbouring South Downs National Park, about its vehicular access, viable water supply given the proximity to a waste collection site, the lack of local medical facilities and more. These are reflected in many submissions to the planning portal. Upper Beeding Parish Council similarly objected to this application, especially as it had preferred alternative site allocated in its adopted neighbourhood plan. In my view, and that of many in Henfield and Small Dole, is that the recommendation to approve this application threatens the integrity of Henfield's neighbourhood plan. The many local people who gave time and effort to develop the neighbourhood plan or who expressed their views at our neighbourhood planning consultation will feel let down if the neighbourhood plan is not supported. Approval of this application would do nothing to encourage positive engagement and further destroys public trust in the planning processes. Arguably, any decision has wider implications beyond this one application. If the Henfield neighbourhood plan is not upheld, it risks undermining the weight given to other neighbourhood plans across the district and is likely to have other impacts within Henfield and Upper Beeding parishes. I hope that councillors will consider protecting the integrity of the relevant neighbourhood plans very carefully, despite the many planning pressures being applied. But if you are minded to approve despite these conflicts and concerns, please make every effort to reduce potential harms to Small Dole as a coherent, sustainable village by ensuring positive Section 106 benefits are allocated there, and in particular to improve road safety, public transport and new cycling links. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just for clarity, I did allow you to continue because I'd interrupted you earlier. So you did go over the 5 minutes, but I had interrupted you. But thank you very much. Councillor Josh Potts. Thank you. And you have 5 minutes, councillor.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing us Henfield ward members to speak tonight. I know it's somewhat of an unusual application as far as boundaries are concerned. I want to focus directly on the logic of the officer recommendation because its conclusion rests on what is described as a rare situation, supported by 3 main pillars. If any one of those pillars does not stand, the recommendation should not stand. There is no dispute that the council has a severe housing land supply shortfall. I accept that this engages the tilted balance and gives significant weight to the delivery of housing. However, a housing shortfall does not suspend the development plan, and it does not require approval of every unallocated countryside site. Paragraph 14 of the NPPF exists precisely because national policy recognises that housing delivery failures would otherwise override neighbourhood plans by default. The shortfall explains why pressure exists. It does not on its own explain why this particular site, deliberately excluded from the neighbourhood plan, should now be approved. This remains a district-wide delivery issue, not a site-specific justification. The second pillar is reliance on the emerging local plan, and the fact that this site appears as a draft allocation. I accept that this is a material consideration, but the officer report is explicit that the emerging local plan and its evidence base currently attract only limited weight. Limited weight emerging policy cannot reasonably be used to displace the adopted development plan in full. Plan making is where sites are selected. Decision taking is where adopted plans are applied. Approving this application on the basis that the site may be allocated later effectively anticipates the outcome of plan making and undermines confidence in the plan-led system. The third pillar concerns the weight to be given to the neighbourhood plan. I accept that the neighbourhood plan's housing requirement now carries reduced weight, given the absence of an adopted local plan and the severe housing land supply position. However, reduced weight is not no weight. A made neighbourhood plan remains part of the statutory development plan, and it continues to carry meaningful weight in assessing spatial strategy, site selection, and where development should and should not go. There is no automatic tapering or soft expiry in law or national policy. Any reduction in weight must be justified by substance, not timing alone. Treating nearing expiry as a reason to largely discount the plan is therefore a judgment call, and members are fully entitled to reject it. So how are the harms reinforce refusal? When those 3 pillars are tested, the underlying harms become decisive. The proposal would result in permanent countryside and settlement edge harm, extending built form beyond the established boundary into open land, with acknowledged impacts on landscape character and the setting of the South Downs National Park. These harms are irreversible and should not be downplayed simply because the application is in outline. In addition, environmental health raised concerns about whether the scheme represents good acoustic design at all, including reliance on closed windows and mechanical ventilation, and the absence of adequate daytime noise assessment. At outline stage, members should be satisfied that acceptable living conditions can realistically be achieved within the parameters now being approved. That confidence has not yet been demonstrated. Deferring fundamental concerns does not reduce harm, it increases risk. So when the officer conclusion is examined carefully, the housing land supply shortfall weighs in favour of development, but does not justify this site. The emerging local plan carries limited weight and cannot override adopted policy. And while the neighbourhood plan's housing numbers may carry reduced weight, its spatial strategy and site selection framework remain material. What is presented as a rare situation is, in reality, a finely balanced judgment, and members are entitled to conclude that the adverse impacts of granting permission do significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. So members, for those reasons, I urge you to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillor. That's... So officers will come back on points raised during the public speaking.
Thank you. So just to confirm, the application has been considered on a flat balance, noting that the neighbourhood plan is in date still, so that disengages the tilted balance. And we as officers are cognizant that we do have a housing supply land shortfall, and therefore we do have to consider alternative sites. And as assessed in the report, this is considered to be a suitable site. It has been assessed robustly against the shaping planning in Horsham, and hence that underpins the recommendation for approval as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now open it up for debate by the members of the committee, and I will go to Ward Member Councillor Roger Knoll first.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify again for members of the committee, this site is in Henfield Parish, but in Councillor Croker's and my ward. This is confusing, but pertinent to my comments. At the last planning committee meeting, we considered a development just under 200 metres south of this site, which was within the neighbourhood plan and was approved by this committee. However, this site is not in the Henfield neighbourhood plan, and despite the tilted balance as a result of our lack of a local plan, is possibly one application too far for the locality. Small Dole only has a population of 786, according to the officers' count. And this application increases that population by 13%, again, according to the officers. And that's without the Oxcroft development to the south, which we approved 2 weeks ago, or the proposed Delta development to the north. This hamlet has one very small pub, one store cum post office, which can only accommodate half a dozen people at a time. But no schools, no community centre, and a bus service that does not operate after 6 p.m. Young people have absolutely nowhere to go, and it's impossible to get to Henfield for any social events without a car. A previous application at this site was refused in 2015 precisely because it was outside the built-up area boundary and partly because it was not in the neighbourhood plan at the time. So what's changed now? Well, I can tell you, absolutely nothing. This, absolutely nothing apart from an unprecedented pressure from above to build more and more houses in Henfield. Henfield, again in whose parish this application lies, has now been deluged with applications, and the most recent applications adding almost 1,000 houses, which present calculations show a 40% increase in the village of Henfield. The parish of Henfield just cannot sustain any further building, and there's absolutely no requirement for more housing in Small Dole. This is an agricultural field which lies within the setting of the South Downs, and the SDMPA maintain that viewpoints must be retained. I know that every application that's currently coming before us is being passed due to the pressure being put upon this committee by the government's building targets, and the lack of our local plan. But for once, we have all the right reasons to refuse. And I'd ask this committee to consider doing just that this evening.
If you want to come back. Thank you, councillor. You turn the microphone off.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just come back with a couple of points members to consider. As set out in the report, we do need to recognise that the neighbourhood plan is 4.5 years old, and it will become 5 years old in June. If an application is refused, they have up to 6 months to appeal. So we need to be mindful of the age, but not just that. Obviously, when this neighbourhood plan was written, our housing numbers were different, and obviously they are significantly higher now, which is a material consideration. We've talked about the weight of the emerging local plan, and it's right to say that that has limited weight. However, obviously, we do need to recognise there is an evidence base that supports that, which looks at site assessments. And obviously, as part of that evidence base, this site was considered to be sustainable. So, and that evidence base is a material consideration. And also in terms of both our current local plan and our emerging local plan, they both consider that the settlement is capable of accommodating some level of growth. So again, we do need to be mindful of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Croker, as ward member.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by thanking those members that have spoken before me, especially those from Henfield Parish. And I'll try not to run over the same points. I would note that this is an outline, and for me the key things are 45 and access. So I'll consider those two. As we've heard, this settlement has a shop, a small one pub, but also a major local employer in terms of the Mackley estate. All these lie to the south of this site, yet members will observe that there's no sustainable travel access or egress rather from the site to the southeast, which seems a, shall I say, mistake or an omission. I understand there are reasons for that, but I don't think they are a valid excuse for accepting the site in terms of its access. Moving on to the 45, as has already been explained, this site is not preferred. The numbers in percentage terms of increase for small dole, should this site be approved in conjunction with the site further south that is in the local plan, would amount to a 23% cumulative impact on small dole, which I regard as excessive. Bearing in mind that this is a small rural community. The other effect, or one of the other effects of this development, will be on the South Downs National Park. And I note that there are various comments from the South Downs National Park, to do with the layout of this site, which they point out is contrary to the current settlement pattern, which is essentially of a ribbon development. But generally, and indeed the officer picks up at 6.126, the introduction of housing into this countryside location beyond the settlement boundary would inevitably result in a degree of visual harm, intrusion, and irreversible change. And as we've already heard, paragraph 14 of the NPPF is also relevant here, where the adverse impact of allowing development that conflicts with the neighbourhood plan is likely to significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Clearly, this is a planning judgment. I think I disagree with the conclusion of officers. So therefore, I would like to propose that this application is rejected for its conflict with the wishes of the community as expressed in the Henfield Neighbourhood Plan, and its failure to provide suitable sustainable travel access to the local shop, pub and industrial estate. So NPPF paras 14, 109 and 110 relate to that suggestion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay. Any other member wishing to comment on this? Councillor Mercer, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Forgive me for my usual confusion. I'm particularly focused on paragraph 610 and then the later paragraph in relation to balance. What paragraph 610 says is that the NPPF tells us that the neighbourhood plan is still valid and that where that presumption applies to applications, the adverse impact of allowing development that conflicts with the neighbourhood plan is likely to significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Now that language is important. We're constantly being told by our officers that we need to be careful about the different gradations of language that are used in planning decisions. In the balancing paragraph later on, the logic that is used is that the neighbourhood plan, one of the three things that I mentioned, is that the neighbourhood plan is about to run out of date in June of this year. We're also told many times in this committee that we need to make decisions on the basis of what the situation is now and what is the situation in front of us, rather than what we think the situation might be at some stage in the future. And I don't accept the logic of the final paragraph and the balancing there. I think paragraph 610 says it very explicitly. This is not something even the emerging plan doesn't outweigh the significant and the damage that this might do to this area. So I have to say I am not in a situation to support this recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor van der Boer, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree. It's really important that we, as a committee, support those elements that the community have put together to look after their local areas in the same way that we are expected to look after this local area. And the neighbourhood plan is the fundamental document that we can do that with. And my gut feeling is we should support the neighbourhood plan here. And if the developer is serious, which they clearly are, perhaps they should work with the parish council, because if this has to be renewed in the next 4 or 5 months, work with the parish council and get it into the revised plan, would be my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Just to pick up on the access potential in the southeast corner, it is something that we as officers did investigate with the applicants. And as far as I can recall, there is feasibility issues in delivering that access. So it has been investigated, but there's land level differences, site ownership differences in delivering that access point. But it is something that we did look at as part of the proposal that's in front of you now. We did also look at the South Downs Naval Plan, that South Downs local authorities' comments about the ribbon arrangement, and I think it's worth noting that if you did apply a ribbon type development along this site, it would be much higher than the proposal is now, in that the current proposal sits at the lowest part of the site. There's a good, it's about 4 or 5 meters difference between the south and the north sides of this site. So if you were to apply that to this site, you would end up with a much more visible, potentially a lot more visible in terms of wider views. So by focusing the development along the southern side, where it is a lot lower, it can be much more effectively screened from both sides. So when you look from the northwest corner of the site across towards the elevated South Downs, and also when you see it from the South Downs itself. And perhaps if I go back to this slide here, you can just about see try and find my cursor. There we go. It is in that area there. Appreciated it is at distance, but that's exactly as you would see it from Truley Hill, which is seen at a distance. And the development site there, it would blend within a patchwork of the wider Small Dole development, and that's reflective of the landscape officer's comments that actually the harm can be mitigated, and part of that is by way of its location along the southern side of the site, where it is much lower. Thank you.
Any other member wishing to comment on this particular application? Councillor Vickers, is your arm raised? Sorry.
Chairman, yes. We're in a very difficult position, and it's not really our fault that we don't have a 5-year land supply, because we all know water neutrality came in and all development stopped, basically. So we are in this position where the tilted balance kicks in. I support neighbourhood plans. The parishes have put a lot of effort into doing them. Those that have up-to-date ones are still vulnerable, and I know that from my own ward, where we lost a very big appeal for houses that were outside the development plan that were recommended for refusal because the tilted balance kicked in and the benefits outweighed the harm on the landscape impact. There is clearly landscape impact here. You can't build 45 houses without having some landscape impact. So it's whether that balance tips over to the harm outweighing the benefits, and that is the difficult dilemma that we find ourselves in. So what I'm saying to officers is, can you just clarify for me, do neighbourhood plans actually carry weight when they're still valid? Because I know we lost that big appeal in Southwater. This is a similar situation. The plan is still valid, but runs out in 6 months' time, by which time an appeal will be heard. So I'm slightly at a dilemma as to whether there is good grounds here to refuse this on landscape impact, because there clearly is some. And I'd like your advice, please.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of landscape impacts, I think the officer's view is that's localised, and that would be easily weighed against the benefit of the delivery of housing, including affordable housing. So I think there's a difficult argument to substantiate in terms of landscape. In terms of the neighbourhood plan, it does carry full weight. It is in date, so you are considering on a flat balance, as the inspector did at the Horsham Golf and Fitness appeal, where the Southwater neighbourhood plan was still in date and had allocations there. So you are considering it on the flat balance. The age of the neighbourhood plan is a material consideration, but as members have said, it is in date. but it is still 4.5 years old, so you have to be mindful of that. Obviously, our housing land supply is very low, one of the lowest in the country. So again, that carries significant weight in decision making. So it is a difficult one, members. Officers fully recognise that. Obviously, our view is, having weighed up all the bits and pieces, recognise bits have limited weight, but when you add all those limited weights together and the benefit of the housing and our 5-year housing land supply, officers have recommended approval. But we do recognise the neighbourhood plan is in weight. In terms of Councillor Vanderberg's point, I think it's unlikely that they're going to have a new neighbourhood plan in 6 months. As we know, these things take a significant period of time. They may well be willing and able to progress that, but the likelihood is it will go, it will become out of date in terms of planning speak beyond 5 years in June this year. Thank you.
Councillor Vanderbilt.
Yeah, sorry, they may well have their revision of their plan well underway, and it may be ready. We just don't know, but it might be ready in June.
It would have to go to kind of an examination and things like that. So unfortunately, these things take quite a significant period of time. But there may be early preparations. You're right, Councillor Vanderberg.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Trollope.
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to support the officers here. What I'm struggling with is if I were to have to face either of the parish councils after this vote, where we voted to support your recommendation, how would I answer their concerns that they brought up? I mean, they make some, very good points in the parish comments, and I don't know how to answer it in my head. And also part of that is the Upper Beeding Parish Council. They stated, if we do approve it, then can we at least ensure, and then they raise 5 points or 4 points. Can we, noting where we are at the stage of this application, are these things that we can give them reassurances of? For example, making sure that the dark skies is adhered to, etc. Are those conditions that can be added to any subsequent approval?
Thank you. Obviously, there's certain things that will be subject to reserve matters. Dark skies policy, it's not unreasonable to secure that as a planning condition. The mature trees along the southern side, that's part of the landscaping, and we've got no proposals for those to be removed. Development blending into the existing community, again, details of appearance, materials and such matters will be subject to reserve matters, so we can ensure that as and when that were to come in, that consideration is given to an appropriately designed development. Wildlife, well, there is a lot of site that remains open, and the application has been subject to consideration and review by the council's ecology officer. So they are satisfied that there's no adverse harm or impact to protected or priority or endangered species as a result of the proposed development. So I think, in short, yes, there are ways that these could be planning conditions or built into the reserve matters, should members resolve to grant permission tonight.
Thank you. And I would just note, I mean, I noticed the picture of how it is now, and in 15 years' time, I'm playing spot the difference. I actually can't spot the difference, really. So it does sort of give me a little bit of reassurance that, even though it is close to the protected area, it doesn't seem very much going on that picture to affect it very much.
I had the same thought, but on studying the photo, there is a subtle difference. If you take the, I'm sure the officer can take us through that subtle difference, but there is a subtle difference if you compare the top photo where the arrow finishes and the bottom where the cursor is right now. There is a subtle difference.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get my cursor back somewhere. Oh, there we go. So here you can see there's slightly more of that green field visible. And in this one, you can see it slightly more coverage in terms of patchwork. If I could just refer back.
My understanding is that the trees that are present, there's this row of trees that won't be touched. That's largely providing this camouflage in effect. Is that correct?
Yes, so the landscaping boundary along the south is to be retained to the site here where the cursor is. So that's all to be retained. And indeed the screening along the eastern side, that's to be retained as well. Thank you.
Okay, and then just one last point that I would make, and it's just more of a point I'm making, is one of the councillors talked about there not being a lot of amenities in the nearby village, but my thought is that if you grow the population, then that would seem to help out that local shop, that or the local pub as well if there's more clientele. It's just I just wanted to make the point that I don't think that's a reason for objecting to the plan. I think on the contrary, increasing the housing in that area would increase the size of the community and improve those amenities. It's just my thought. So at the moment, I'm still rather minded to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Trollope. Councillor Lambert, then I'll come to Councillor Croker on the point.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, what I want to ask the officers is that on the Upper Beeding Parish Council, where they say, is there any way that we can condition that existing line of mature trees must stay, the dark sky policy must be supported, because then they're saying that should this outline be approved, there's an opportunity to create a development that blends into the existing community, which is what we want, surely, and that the wildlife has enjoyed the clear access to the field for years, that this needs to be considered. So if that is kept and the dark skies, then we've got a parish council that have got what they want.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Just chatting to my colleague there. As discussed, the hedge to the bottom of the development here is proposed to be retained. There are general landscaping conditions suggested as part of the proposal, but it is possible to specifically state about retention of that hedgerow, perhaps within that condition. In terms of dark skies and the kind of character of the area, they are more matters that would be covered within any reserved matters, but it can be something we could add as informatives, which would then help provide advice to the developer in terms of what we would be seeking within any reserved matters application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, before I come to you, Councillor Croker, I just want to ask a question. I'll come to you afterwards, Councillor Clark. If you look at the slide at the moment, the field and space are directly above the development. Would that be secured as part of legal agreement for 30 years under the BNG agreement, Biodiversity Net Gain?
So obviously the parameter plan secures the developable area, and then so therefore you're granting permission for the developable area and the rest to remain as open space. So obviously if they wish to do anything with that land in the future, it would require planning permission. But in terms of biodiversity net gain, it would meet the definition of significant. So we would be securing the management of that for 30 years as part of the legal agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will come to you, as I suggested, in a moment. Councillor Clark.
Can officers remind me, this is basically, we're looking at outline planning permission. We've heard a lot of discussion about more detailed matters that I suspect will go to the next step. The question I have in my mind is that the next step, are the local councillors or councillors going to be involved in that decision making? Or once this, if this is approved or turned down, but if this is approved, is that it for input? Or will there be an opportunity to, how can I put this, take an interest in what's going on?
You, Councillor Clark. So if outline is approved, there will be the submission of a reserve matters at some point, and obviously members may wish to call that to committee. We would obviously encourage the developers to submit a pre-application submission, and there perhaps might be opportunities for member engagement at that stage.
Thank you. Councillor Croker. Were you minded to put in an alternative motion? Or were you just asking questions in regards to the conflict, etc.?
I was minded to put in an alternative motion.
Yeah.
Chair.
Okay. And what might that be? Just for clarity, the ward member can put in a motion but can't vote on it. So if you wish to put forward a motion, you can do so.
The motion would be to reject this application for its conflict with the wishes of the community as expressed in the Henfield Neighbourhood Plan and its failure to provide suitable, sustainable travel access to the local shop, pub and industrial estate. It may be that the officers might wish to take some of the rough edges off.
Thank you, Councillor Croker. Whilst I recognise the Henfield Neighbourhood Plan is the wishes of the community, I don't think that should form part of the wording of a reason for refusal. It would be the conflict with the neighbourhood plan, which would be the key point, and the fact that it's being considered on a flat balance in accordance to NPPF paragraph 14 in terms of the wording, which says it's likely unacceptable. My only comment on the suitable and sustainable access is, as my colleague said, providing an access in that bottom corner of the site was explored. Obviously, the evidence base as part of the local plan did consider this site to be sustainable. So I think, you know, my professional view is that would be difficult to substantiate at appeal in terms of the sustainability of the site, but ultimately that's for you to members to consider, given it's being put forward as a motion. Thank you.
Well, knowing the Upper Beeding Parish Council as I do, I think they would be quite keen to see that aspect in this motion to refuse.
That's fair. That's fair.
That's acceptable then, Councillor Croker. I just need to be sure of the wording of the motion so that we know all members are clear on what they are voting on, or should we go to the vote, of course. Councillor Knoll, yes.
I just wanted to remind everyone again that we are talking about Upper Beeding Parish Council's proposals. It's not in Upper Beeding Parish Council. This site is in Henfield Parish Council. So I'm not sure, perhaps I can be guided by the officers. I know it's in my ward, but what I'm saying is we're talking about the suggestions of Upper Beeding Parish Council. It's not in their parish, it's in Henfield Parish.
Okay. Do you have anything to comment on that? Comment from Councillor Croker, from Councillor Knoll at all?
Sustainable access to the.
No, I don't think so, Chair. I mean, wherever such suggestions come from, I think they should be considered if they're reasonable. And I would regard those suggestions from Upper Beeding Parish Council as reasonable. And as ward member covering this site, I would endeavour to take those forward with the developer should this proposal be approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just coming up with some weasel words, Councillor Croker.
So I have written down here, based, Councillor Croker, on what you said just now and a little bit earlier in your first motion. So the proposal is in conflict with policy 1 of the Henfield Neighbourhood Plan and fails to provide suitable and sustainable travel access to the local shop and industrial estate to the south, contrary to policy 40 of the Horsham District Planning Framework. And I've included here paragraphs 115 and 117 of the NPPF. I believe you referred to 109 and 108 earlier, which I believe are the older version of the NPPF, not the newer version.
Yes, you're correct there. I think I was using the December 24 version.
That's the version I'm using. So can you
Okay.
repeat those paragraphs you said?
I'll assume that you're right and I'm not. Thank you.
Just for clarity, are members clear on what the motion is? Yep.
Can I just?
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to remind members, you are voting on that motion in its entirety. And obviously I have expressed my concerns in terms of at least part of that motion. And obviously the conflict with the neighbourhood plan is a balancing exercise. So just to note that, members, thank you.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Mercer, thank you. Therefore, we'll go to the vote on that motion. All those in favour of the motion, please show. Okay. All those against? Any abstentions? Okay, Monica.
For the motion, 3 against, 8 abstentions, 2.
Therefore, I'm now going to move to the vote on the recommendation of the committee report, which is to approve outline planning permission subject to appropriate conditions and the completion of the necessary section 106 agreement within 4 months of the decision of this committee, or such longer period as agreed by the Director of Place acting reasonably and properly. And I just remind members that the section 106 will carry a minimum of 35% affordable housing as noted in the officer's presentation.
Can we have the informative on the dark skies, please?
Could you speak? I didn't hear that properly.
Sorry, can you have the informative on the dark skies
And tighten up the landscaping condition, please.
Sorry, can you? I not quite hear you. Apologies.
Sorry, the night sky, dark skies informative, but also to tighten up the landscape condition that protected the hedgerow.
The amendment to the landscaping conditions.
Just the wording, just to add that.
Mentions the retention of
Thank
that
you.
hedgerow.
So it would include the informative, and I'd ask the officer to capture that in the minutes, and also tightening up of the condition on the landscaping. Okay, all those in favour, please show with the recommendation. All those against? Any abstentions?
For the application, 10 against, 3 abstentions, 0.
Thank you very much. Therefore, the recommendation to approve outline planning permission has been passed. Thank you very much. Members of the public who wish to leave, they can do so. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to the next agenda item, which is DC 25-1356. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Sorry, apologies. Crosswinds, Hampers Lanes, Storrington. Please could the officer make the representation to committee? Thank you.
Good evening. Members are advised to review the addendum for this item, which clarifies how any potential great crested newt impacts will be addressed via condition. Nature Space have confirmed that the applicant has now commenced the process for entering the district licence scheme. So this application relates to a single dwelling located within a large plot of land west of Hampers Lane in the parish of Washington. The site is surrounded by other detached properties, also set within large grounds. This is the site as existing, which has been vacant for a number of years and is now overgrown. The land levels fall by approximately 6 metres from north to south. This is the house that currently sits on the site, and these are its floor plans and elevations. This is the site entrance showing the adjacent property known as the Maples. This is the access track that leads to the site. The track serves a total of 4 properties, including the application site. It's worth noting that the trees to the left-hand side of the lower image fall under a group tree preservation order. Given the vegetation in and around the site, there are limited views of the site from wider vantage points. This glimpsed view is from Badger's Holt to the south. Badger's Holt predominantly features red brick houses and bungalows. The nearest property to the site is the Mandarin, as shown in the bottom photograph. The proposal seeks full planning permission to replace the house with 2 detached 2-storey houses. This is the proposed site layout. The site access would remain as existing. These are the proposed floor plans showing each house as having 4 bedrooms. And these are the elevations. Both houses would be the same, but set perpendicular to each other within the site. As mentioned, the site slopes considerably from a high point in the north to a low point in the south. This plan shows the proposed site section and the level changes. There is a history of applications for housing on this site, as set out in the report at section 2.9. In 2017, 2 dwellings were granted outline planning permission on appeal. This plan shows the indicative site layout for that scheme. Subsequent to this, 2 outline applications for 3 dwellings on the site were refused planning permission as they were considered to represent an overdevelopment of the site. This is the indicative layout for those proposals. Heath Common, which is where the site is located, is subject to the Heath Common Design Statement SPD, which was adopted in 2018, superseding a previous 1999 version. Officers consider that the proposals broadly accord with the design requirements of the SPD, the key aspects of which are explained here. It is important to note that all existing boundary trees are to be retained. These include category A and B oaks, and these trees will be protected during works. This slide here shows how those trees will be protected. The impacts on adjoining residents are addressed at paragraph 6.25 to 6.31 of the report and are also considered acceptable. The greatest impact would be on the occupiers of the Mandarin, which sits on lower ground south of the site, such that the elevated position and orientation of plot 2 does have the potential to cause harm. This slide shows there to be a 31.5 metre separation distance between elevations, with new planting indicated to screen the boundary. This slide shows a section between the properties and the land level difference of 6.1 metres. Whilst there would clearly be some potential overlooking from the rear of plot 2, overall, given the separation distance and opportunities for additional screen planting, officers advised that the amenity impacts can be suitably mitigated such that they would not justify the refusal of planning permission. Both the SPD and the previous appeal decision allowing 2 dwellings on this site are material to this application. Given the appeal decision and the broad compliance with the design aspects of the SPD, officers advised that there are no planning reasons to resist 2 dwellings on this site. Overall, officers recommend that the application be approved on this basis, subject to the completion of the district licence as explained in the addendum and subject to the conditions as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite the first public speaker, and that is Wendy Ratcliffe, please. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Right, I live at the Maples, which is next door, and we built it ourselves. Well, we had a builder, but I know the history of the whole site. And the main problem is the access to the site, which nobody seems to take any notice of. You cannot get a lorry round the corner from either direction, from Hampers Lane into our little access lane. If, as you know, building materials tend to come on big lorries, and even if you specify a small lorry, it often comes on a big lorry because they just don't believe you. And so then the stuff has to be offloaded onto a smaller vehicle on Hampers Lane, which causes a bit of a problem to the residents. Nobody seems to appreciate this, that if you put 2 houses on, you've got double the amount of materials. So you've got double the congestion. The sight lines coming out of the little lane are near to zero, and when I'm coming out onto Hampers Lane, I come very slowly. On Friday in particular, I stuck my nose out, and there was a van, a large van, coming up Hampers Lane, and it appeared to fill the whole lane. And so I just reversed quickly back into where I'd come from. But it is a bit of a problem. The other problem is what may seem nothing to you, but the bins are a bit of a problem because they would fill the whole of Hampers Lane. We got special dispensation to be able to put the bins where the lane is just slightly wider, and that was with the refuse bins. But of course there are now bins for everything. And there are now, at the moment, there are 8 bins, soon to be the food bin, food waste bin as well. And the planning application says they will have storage for their bins and they'll bring them up to the end of the lane.
Could you bring your comments to a close, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so if they do that, it then fills the whole of the access lane. I don't see how it works. Again, the only other thing I'd like to say is that this second property will be very high, peering into the Mandarin. And the Mandarin was asked to be lowered when it was actually built because of it overlooking other properties.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Don't know how you turn it off.
It's okay, you can leave it for the moment. Thank you. I'd like to invite Rob Peters, please. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the panel. I appreciate the time that you've given me to speak to you this evening. Back in 2018, with consultation between Heath Common residents and Horsham District Council, the Heath Common design statement was put together. And there are certain aspects within the Heath Common design statement which I feel would lead me to say that this goes against the plan as outlined given to you. Within the Heath Common design statement, it says proposals should reflect the area's low density of 5 dwellings per hectare and recognise that further plot subdivision is limited due to harmful impact upon the area's unique, spacious Sylvanian character and landscape. It is my opinion that having 2 dwellings on the plot not only would increase the number of houses beyond the 5 dwellings per hectare level, it also would be construed to be another plot subdivision because you're taking one plot and dividing it between 2 dwellings. That is my first point as to why I feel that this proposal should be rejected. Overdevelopment. The second point I wish to make is individuality of design. Again, as laid down in the Heath Common design statement, the area, as agreed by Horsham District Council, is of special and unique character. And as such, most dwellings are of an individual character. What is proposed is 2 dwellings of equal size and proportion and appearance, which goes contrary to what the Heath Common design statement would say is allowed with regard to the planning application. That is my second point. The last point I wish to make, moving on from where Wendy was, is regard to site access. The unkept lane, which is the only access to the site, 80 metres long, 8 feet wide. The turn-in, driving north on Hampers Lane, is barely able in a car. Coming south, turning right into the unkept lane is okay, but anything longer than a car will not turn around the corner. I cannot see where deliveries will be offloaded other than north of the site, Pixie's Corner, and then handled, telehandled or fork lift up to the site, which is masses of traffic up and down that lane. The lane itself is not in a great state. My utilities are under that lane, and I've already had cause for concern with regard to heavy movement up there previously, causing me to have a burst water pipe on a section of ground which is not owned by me, but my utility says that it's my responsibility. And I fear that the access, being the only access to the site, is going to cause us problems there as well.
Thank you very much. Could you bring your comments to conclusion?
That's my point.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Edward Mills, please. and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Chair, committee members, my name is Edward Mills, owner and occupier of the Mandarin, which lies immediately to the south of the application site at Crosswinds. I have lived at that site with my wife for 39 years. My property would perhaps be the most affected by the planning application. The application is for development on a severely sloping and south-facing site above and overlooking my property and others. It would seem as though the guidelines in the Heath Common Design Statement have not been considered, as the Horsham District Planning Department have stated that their application does not conflict with the Heath Common Design Statement, which clearly it does. In paragraphs 14 and 15 of the HCDS design criteria, the development would create undue harm through overlooking of neighbours' property, overbearing impact, loss of privacy and loss of light, as evidenced by the existing neighbours' statements. For my property, the development will overlook my bedroom, bathroom, dressing room, studio, lounge and kitchen areas and garden from an extremely elevated position and create an overbearing loss of light and privacy. The ridge line of the adjacent property will be some 20 metres above my ground floor. How can that be acceptable to the committee? The topography of the site is not clearly and accurately shown on the application documents, perhaps deliberately so. And this should be clarified before any development can be considered. The proposal also represents a substantial increase in scale and mass, replacing one modest single-storey building with two large two-storey dwellings, which is out of keeping with the rural character that Horsham district policies seek to protect. I do not object to development in principle. A single-storey replacement
You bring
dwelling
your comments to conclusion, please. Thank you.
positioned broadly in the same location as the existing building would be proportionate form of development that respects neighbours' amenity and character of the area. For these reasons, I respectfully ask the committee to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to invite the ward councillor, Councillor Fisher, please. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application, which doesn't comply with national or local planning policy or respects the distinctive character of Heath Common and the lanes, should be refused. The site sits within the Heath Common design statement area, a material planning consideration adopted by HTC as a supplementary planning document. The statement is explicit about Heath Common's defining characteristics: low density development, generous plot sizes, informal layout, individual dwellings of varied design, and narrow private lanes, also public rights of way. The proposal would demolish a single dwelling and replace it with two identical detached dwellings and garages. In my view, and in the view of Washington Parish Council, and as we've heard from the local residents, this represents overdevelopment of the site. The Heath Common design statement, particularly section 2 on detailed planning guidance, makes it clear that infill development risks serious harm to the area's spacious, sylvan and semi-rural character. Its guidance on scale, density and layout emphasises that closely spaced development is out of character. This conflicts with HDPF policies 32 and 33, which require development to respect local distinctiveness, landscape character and settlement pattern, and to avoid harm to amenity. It also conflicts with the Storrington and Sullington and Washington Neighbourhood Plan, Policy 14, which seeks to protect the distinctive character and design qualities of Heath Common, resist suburbanising forms of development, and preserve its unlit rural lanes and dark skies. The NPPF paragraph 135 requires planning decisions to ensure development is sympathetic to local character and history, including their surrounding, built environment and landscape setting, and help maintain a strong sense of place. The introduction of 2 substantial dwellings on this plot, increasing bedroom numbers from 2 to 8, a 4-fold increase, fails to meet that test. Cumulative impact is also critical. The design statement is clear. While individual applications may appear modest in isolation, their cumulative effect is to suburbanise the area. Appeals at Little Thatch and Highcroft were dismissed by inspectors due to harm to the area's spacious character. Approval here would set a dangerous precedent for further plot subdivision across the area. Members may be aware of a previous appeal at this site, DC 1664, which was allowed in 2017. However, that decision predates the adoption of the Heath Common Design Statement, SPD, in July 2018. The inspector at that time explicitly noted that emerging local character guidance couldn't be afforded significant weight. The HDCS now provides exactly that adopted detailed policy framework. Members are both entitled and, I would say, required to give it material weight when assessing character, density and cumulative impact today. Regarding access and highways, the proposal relies on extremely narrow lanes, as we've heard, also public rights of way with no pavements and few passing opportunities. The design statement states these lanes are integral to the character of the area and additional access points and traffic movements should be avoided. Increased vehicle movements with associated 2 dwellings and garages would add congestion and safety risks on lanes never designed for this level of risk of use. Washington PC have serious concerns about restricted access arrangements, shared driveways and implications for emergency vehicles, concerns covered by HTPF Policy 40, which requires safe and appropriate access, and by NPPF paragraphs 115 and 17, which require safe, suitable access for all users. And safe access has not been convincingly demonstrated. There's also clear harm to neighbouring amenity through, as we've heard, loss of privacy, increased noise and activity, and a more intensive form of development. The design space statement explicitly requires development to avoid harm through overlooking, dominance and loss of tranquility, but that's what's going to happen. This proposal fails to demonstrate neighbouring amenity would be protected, contrary to HTPF Policy 33, the Neighbourhood Plan Policy 14 and the design statement. Finally, the design statement advises the retention of trees, hedgerows and soft landscaping are fundamental to character, screening and biodiversity. Please? Yeah. Members, this proposal represents an overdevelopment that would cause unacceptable harm to the character, appearance and function of Heath Common. It conflicts with HDPF policies, the Neighbourhood Plan and the design statement, and also the NPPF. So for these reasons, I respectfully ask that the committee refuse this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So if I may respond to some of the key points that have been raised in those representations, starting off with, and I'll see if this, sorry, bear with me, it's not recognising. No, it's not, is it? It's changing on my screen, but not on the actual image there, which is a little bit frustrating. So bear with me a moment whilst I try. Yeah, I think I'm gonna. I've now unplugged it and I'm having to start again. Here we go. Right. So if I go back to the images of the site access, and I drove this site access just this morning, just to make double check facts. And Hampers Lane is undoubtedly very narrow, single lane track, and it is a tight 90-degree turn into the access track, which leads to the 4 properties, including the application site. And you can see here where the bins are stored in the lower image, close to the Hampers Lane entrance. There have been throughout this area a number of developments over the last sort of 20 years looking to extend properties, rebuild properties and do other works. So in principle, I'd suggest that it wouldn't be a sustainable reason to refuse permission on account of lorries accessing for construction works. However, clearly there's some interaction here that needs to be carefully managed. We have condition 3 on the recommendation, which is a condition for construction management plan that we put on small development schemes. If members, you so wish, we could increase the amount of requirements within there to ask for a more detailed strategy, given the concerns raised by local residents there around how materials will be offloaded and would reach the site. So that would be my recommendation there. In terms of the SPD, and I've got a copy in front of me here, and I'll go first of all to the slide I showed you earlier, which had my summary of the key matters contained within the SPD. Concern was raised over density in the first instance, and the SPD says that the proposals should reflect the area's low density brackets 5 dwellings per hectare. The site is 0.3 hectares for 2 dwellings, which accounts for a 6 dwelling per hectare development. So I find it very difficult to sustain an argument around overdevelopment or over densification of the site. In the surrounding area, there are plots of varying sizes, certainly large properties with large gardens, and equally for elsewhere in the area covered by the design statement, there are much smaller properties. So in that respect, it wouldn't necessarily be out of keeping. Noting that the design guide here refers to maintaining a balance between small, medium and large dwellings and their respective plot sizes in the areas. In terms of the matter of overlooking, as I set out, this was the slide I showed you, which does show quite clearly that plot 2 is on higher ground. The site was surveyed, there are existing and proposed floor levels set out on drawings, and this image here has been produced from that. And it shows that 6 metre difference and also the separations. In terms of the property adjacent the Mandarin, you can see they have a balcony there. That's part of an extension constructed a number of years ago. And inside that's where they have their upper floor space, including sort of bedrooms, dressing rooms, etc. As set out in the report, our view is that mitigation planting, in addition to the existing planting that already exists on and around that boundary, which includes a number of mature oak trees, would be sufficient to mitigate that harm. It's worth noting that of the new buildings, and I'll go back a slide to the floor plan, top or on the right hand side, it's the master bedroom that would be facing towards Mandarin. The other bedroom or the other rooms in that rear elevation serve ensuite bathrooms. So that just gives an idea of the relationship at first floor there, certainly. In terms of other comments around cumulative effects from, and I'll show another slide here, which is the whole Heath Common area, with the site shown in red there. I did an extensive search and could only find one in the last 20 years in the southern part of the Heath Common area, one application for a new dwelling. So in the absence of brand new dwellings in the area, it's difficult to sustain an argument around cumulative impact from increased traffic movements. A lot of the consents otherwise have been to rebuild existing properties. And just as a final point of note, there was reference to the 2017 appeal. I just want to clarify that the inspector there did not make any reference to the previous version of the SPD as it stood at that time. Instead, the inspector made reference only to the Washington Neighbourhood Plan, which he said he said, I'm unable to afford the document, that is the neighbourhood plan, any significant weight because an examining inspector had found that it could not progress to referendum. So the previous inspector, and I'll add some quotes in here, expressly said that, save for a slight increase in density, the subdivision of the existing site would not have a significant impact on the general feel of the area. And as I set out in my presentation there, you cannot see this site from many vantage points at all. It is very enclosed. So when there are concerns, and understand the concerns around the fact that the two properties are of the same design, given that they won't be seen in context because they're not on the main Hampers Lane, they are very much backland, the view there, the harm would be very minimal in the context of what the design SPD is seeking to achieve. And as a final point, highways considerations was laid out by the inspector, and he felt that the net addition of one dwelling wouldn't result in highway harm contrary to the NPPF. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lambert, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. As the officer suggested, can we beef up condition 3 for the plans for the development and
More detailed strategy.
the detailed strategy.
Construction management plan. Yep, I've made a note of that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other member wishing to comment? Yes, Councillor Blackburn, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just ask, because the ward members said, and also some residents said, that this application does not meet the Heath Common design statement, but your papers say it does. Can you just clarify that, please?
So I have at the back end of here quoted directly, got the two main elements of the design statement referred to. So these are the 4 paragraphs relating to the scale of development and the requirements for new buildings. And my summary page is the summary of the key elements here, which the proposals meet, and that one area where I identified that it doesn't quite meet, and that is the design being the same for each of the dwellings. In terms of amenity, one of the speakers referred to paragraphs 14 and 15 there, which talks about development not adversely affecting neighbouring properties and not dominating dwellings. Those requirements obviously are in parallel with HDPF policies 32, 33, etc. And as set out in the presentation and the report, we have given careful consideration to that impact, particularly on the Mandarin, and overall feel with that mitigation that these requirements can be met.
Councillor Clark, yes.
Quick question. One of the applications was refused. It went to appeal. The appeal basically permitted it, as I read it. Is that the fallback position, or has that lapsed?
It's not a fallback position. It has lapsed. However, it is a material consideration given the inspector's findings.
Councillor Knoll, yes.
Can we just look at the design of these two buildings again, please? Because they look very similar. And number 3, part 3 of the slide you just showed us said that each building should be unique.
Yes, you're quite right. They are identical buildings. Now, part 3, I'll scroll back down to that so you can, rather than read it out, you can read it for yourselves. Obviously, new buildings reflecting existing styles, and the character in the area is very much brick, tile, first floors contained partially within roofs. So in that respect, the dwellings are characteristic of others in the area. However, it's the uniqueness element that has been brought up. Now, one option, members, you could consider is the material finish of the dwellings and whether one contains a different type of material to differentiate it from the other. However, as I said, in reality, it's only probably plot 2 that might have some visibility in the wider context, because that is the one that's further out towards where elevator views might be seen from longer distance. Plot 1 certainly is more disguised within the site.
Councillor Vickers, yes.
Yes, very quickly, Chairman. One of the objectors, the nearest neighbour, was concerned about overlooking, and it's quite clear that the plot 2 is higher than the adjoining resident. I see there are trees there and there is boundary planting there, and there is a condition to enhance that boundary. Are we happy that that is significantly enough to minimise the impact of that overlooking?
Our view as officers is yes, that is sufficient to mitigate the harm. If I can go back to this here image here that shows the existing trees and those to be retained, you can see them on the southern boundary there, which is a mix of silver birch, holly, cherry, cypress and oak trees. And there is a gap there that would be filled according to this image with new planting, and certainly through the condition that we have, we'd insist that there is a strengthening of the boundary planting there.
And is that protection in place for some years? So if it failed for any reason, they'd have to replace
We can
it?
certainly, yes, absolutely.
Lovely.
Put that on.
Thank you very much.
Any other member wishing to speak? Yes, Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair. This question of overlooking interests me, and because of where I live, if you like, down slope from other dwellings. And so when I get these applications coming in and looking at distances between dwellings, I look out the back window, upslope. And for me, fortunately, it's 60 metres to the next facade. So I'm a little bit concerned here that in this case, it's only just over 30 metres. And that worries me. And I have a lot of sympathy with the resident who's brought that up. I do also consider that, like much in planning, the relevance or the strength of the local design statement, the SPD, it is somewhat subjective. I think my view is that it has more weight, if you like, than the officer has suggested. Accordingly, I am inclined to put a motion to refuse this application. But I would be interested in hearing whether any other members of the committee would support that. If anybody does wish to put their head over the parapet, then I probably can put together some words relating to it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll come back to you in a little while. Any other member wishing to speak? Councillor Knoll.
Having heard Councillor Croker's point there, I would also like to add. Sorry, could you not hear me?
No.
Oh.
Wrong name.
We can hear you, Councillor Knoll.
Okay. I forgot what I was saying. Oh yes, the screening that's been suggested by the officers is obviously deciduous trees. So for 4 or 5 months a year, possibly longer, depending upon how climate changes, there'll be no significant screening between this and the overlooked house, the Mandarin. So I think we have to consider that as well.
Can I just clarify that we're not recommending deciduous planting? We haven't recommended any particular type of planting. However, evergreens would logically be the solution you're after there.
Councillor Knoll, I think it's important to recognise that general amenity in terms of the level distances we would consider to be acceptable, and I think my colleague mentioned this is 21 metres back to back. So generally, if a development meets 21 metres back to back, it's considered to give those dwellings a sufficient level of amenity. Now, clearly in this instance, you've got a significant land difference that you need to take into account. But then equally, you've got the slide with the exact distances difference. You've got 31 metres. So I think obviously it's more than the 20, but then there is a significant land difference. So I think officers' view is that that impact is mitigated by that the increase in distance when considering that land difference, in addition to the ability to have some planting there. Thank you.
Councillor Trott, then I'll come to you, Councillor Lambert. Councillor Trollope.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to accept Councillor Crooker's invitation to put my head above the parapet, but honestly, I haven't heard any discussion point that enticed me to go against the officer's recommendations on this plan. I mean, I look at the access road. I'm sure that can be fulfilled by any sort of condition. The road didn't seem. I've seen narrower roads that we've accepted plans on in the past. I'm thinking in Pulborough, where I can't remember the application, but there was one where it was a narrow road, which was a concern. The height elevation, the overlooking, again, I think 20 meters is a fairly long distance, and I think with sufficient foliage, I just don't see that other property being severely overlooked. And again, even if I'm sure there could be something, you know, at a later stage, maybe some sort of a condition or just working with the developer. And in terms of the density, did the officer say it was I mean, it's only slightly over the density, and in any case, it's two houses. They've both still have quite large plots, and it's in a secluded area. I just don't see it changing the landscape of the outlying area. I really don't. You know, the plots will still be far bigger than the plot I own at home, and you know, quite nice as well. I think it's actually, what I've seen from the pictures, it's quite sympathetic to its location, and I certainly can't see how if this were to be appealed, that we've done any legal point in planning that we could use to defend this at an appeal stage. So I would encourage the members to accept this application as per the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Trollope. Councillor Lambert.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, could we put an informative on for the screening to be evergreen? And earlier the officer suggested that to make them different from each other, we could, on the materials for finishing them, could be changed. I'm sure that's what he said. Then they would be different-ish.
Slightly different.
Slightly.
Yeah.
Councillor Croker, did you want to put forward a motion on this particular?
Having listened to subsequent speeches, I don't think so. Thank you.
Right, officer, could you confirm that the specifically around the condition, we want a more detailed strategy of the construction management plan? Yeah, and the material difference, can that be captured?
Yes, just to be clear, from what I've heard, it's amending condition 3 to ask for construction strategy. It's adding an informative for the screening to be evergreen planting. And finally, condition 14, which relates to materials at the moment, asks them to be in accordance with the details submitted. So that will be changed to say, notwithstanding those details, materials to be submitted for approval by the council to show the difference between the properties, or words to that effect.
Consultation with the chairman.
Yes, in consultation with the chairman.
Okay, are we all clear on what the officers made there? So I am going to move for the vote on this particular application, and the recommendation, including the elements that the officers read out to us, to approve planning permission subject to appropriate conditions as noted in the committee report, and the additions that the officers said. Before we take the vote, just to remind Councillor Grech, you're not allowed to vote. So therefore, I propose we vote. All those in favour, please show. Okay. All those against? Any abstentions?
For the application 11, against the application 2, abstention 1.
Therefore, the recommendation, as per the committee report, has been approved. Thank you. You're still, oh, you've got another one, Adrian, haven't you?
Chair, might I request us a very short comfort break, please, proceedings?
No. Right, so, okay.
Giving him that homework.
Right. I will take a small break, 2 minutes. We will be starting.
I shall run.
Hey, sorry, 3 minutes, and I'm timing, and if you're not back in the chamber in 3 minutes, then you'll be excluded from the application. Item number 7, DC 251480, land north of 6 Montpellier Cottages, Old London Road, Washington. Please could the officer present the application to committee?
So this application relates to a parcel of vacant land located on the eastern side of Old London Road in Washington. The A24 runs to the rear of the site, whilst other residential properties sit to the south and to the west. This is an aerial photograph of the site. The Old London Road terminates into a dead end some 160 metres to the south. This is the site as existing, outlined in red, with the A24 behind. This is the street scene facing south, and this is the street scene facing north. The proposal seeks full planning permission for a terrace of 4 dwellings on the site. This is the proposed site layout, showing each property as having 2 on-site parking spaces. An ecological buffer is to be retained at the rear, separating the gardens from the tree line and A24 at the rear of the site. The proposals retain the existing access to the south side that serves garages rear of the dwellings to the south. These are the floor plans, and these are the elevations. And this is the site section, showing that there's a fall in land levels through the site and to the rear. The adjacent site to the immediate north benefits from the extant outline planning permission for 9 homes. This plan shows the indicative site layout for those 9 homes, which may change at reserve matter stage. Given the presence of the adjacent outline planning permission and the support for development in this part of Washington as set out in the neighbourhood plan, officers recommend that planning permission be approved, subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite the first speaker, and that is Matt Hode. Thank you. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, members of the Planning Committee, good evening. My name is Matt Hode. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant as a developer advisor. Thank you to the officers for their thorough and balanced report. We welcome the recommendation before you this evening, and I'll keep my remarks focused on a few key points that I hope will assist members in reaching their decision. Firstly, the principle of development. As the officer's report confirms, the site sits adjacent to Montpellier Gardens, within an area where the made neighbourhood plan positively supports residential development. The surrounding context has changed significantly in recent years, with a number of permissions granted and implemented nearby, including immediately to the north and the west. In that context, this proposal represents a logical and sustainable infill, fully consistent with the pattern of development that members have already supported in this location. Turning to design and character, this scheme has been deliberately kept modest in scale, delivering 4 family-sized homes that reflect the height, materials and rhythm of the neighbouring development. The staggered layout responds carefully to the varied buildings lines along Montpellier Gardens, and officers have concluded that the proposal would sit comfortably within the street scene without appearing cramped or over-dominant. This is a well-considered scheme that makes efficient use of the land without overdevelopment. In terms of residential amenity, the officer's report is clear that there will be no unacceptable impacts on neighbouring occupiers. There are no side-facing windows, appropriate separation distances are maintained, and each new home benefits from good quality private garden space. Future residents will also enjoy acceptable living conditions, with matters such as noise, outlook and privacy addressed through the submitted assessment and proposed mitigation. Members will have also seen that technical matters have raised no objections. Highway impacts are minimal, parking provision meets adopted standards, and the site sits in a sustainable location with access to public transport. Drainage, ecology, air quality and noise have all been robustly assessed, and officers are satisfied that any outstanding details can be secured through planning condition. Finally, I'd note that this proposal would make a small but valuable contribution to housing delivery at a time where the district continues to face acknowledged supply challenges. The officer's report correctly identifies that this is sustainable, plan-led development supported by both local and national policy. In conclusion, members are presented with a proposal that is policy compliant, well designed and supported by professional officers. No technical objections, no planning harm and clear planning benefit. For those reasons, we respectfully ask that you accept the officer's recommendation and grant planning permission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
I now invite the ward councillor, Councillor Fisher. And you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. To be clear, I'm not opposing this development in principle. However, I don't believe this application is yet supported by sufficient evidence for members to make a sound decision. So I'd ask that it should be deferred for the following reasons. First, on highway safety and speed on Old London Road. The officer report relies heavily on the Highway Authority's view that the road is quiet and lightly trafficked, and that speeds are assumed, and that is the word in the report, to be lower, largely because there have been no recorded injury collisions in the last 5 years. However, the Old London Road remains a 60-mile-per-hour road, and no speed survey has been undertaken to verify these assumptions. No injury collisions does not mean no risk, particularly on rural roads where pedestrian activity, near misses and cycling movements are often underreported. This proposal introduces new accesses, additional turning movements and increased pedestrian activity. Without measured speed data, members are being asked to accept assumptions rather than evidence, and that's not good decision making. A speed and traffic survey with 85% 85th percentile data should be undertaken to properly assess if mitigation is required and what form it should take. Paras 115 and 17 of the current MPF require developments to provide safe and suitable access for all users. Locally, the HDPF policy 14 and the neighbourhood plan policy 17 require development to demonstrate it doesn't compromise highway safety or exacerbate traffic risks, and that test has not been met. Second, on road traffic noise and residential amenity, environmental health are concerned that, unlike earlier iterations, the gardens are now located on the east side of the site, closest to the very busy A24, and have requested further information on how both the dwellings and the amenity spaces will be shielded from high traffic noise. Yet that information is not available to us. There's reference to an acoustic fence, but no specifications, drawings or details of height, construction, acoustic performance, continuity or long-term maintenance. The MPPF requires planning decisions to ensure developments create places with a high standard of amenity and are appropriate for their location, taking into account the effects of pollution on health and quality of life as set out in para 135. Local policies, specifically HDPF policies 32 and 33 and reinforced by the Neighbourhood Plan policy 14, are clear that development must provide a good standard of amenity for future occupiers. Members shouldn't be asked to approve a scheme where the usability of private gardens has not been demonstrated. Thirdly, Environmental Health have advised that occupiers cannot rely on openable windows, that mechanical ventilation will be required, that trickle vents are unlikely to be sufficient, and that an overheating risk assessment and air quality assessment should be provided. The MPPF in paras 93 and 187 requires development to support healthy and safe communities and to avoid exposing residents to unacceptable pollution and health risks. When a scheme depends on sealed windows and mechanical systems to mitigate both noise and air quality impacts, members must be confident that it will deliver a genuinely acceptable and durable living environment without introducing overheating risks. Yet that evidence is not supplied. There are also concerns from residents about construction impacts, including noise, dust and parking pressure on Old London Road. While a condition addresses site setup, it doesn't clearly cover contractor parking, routing of heavy vehicles, working hours or neighbourhood liaison, all of which are relevant to protecting existing residential amenity under HDPPF policy 33. Finally, the site's noise mitigation and screening appear to rely in part on trees affected by ash dieback with limited life expectancy. If landscaping and acoustic fencing are integral to making the scheme acceptable, members need confidence in a robust long-term planting and replacement strategy consistent with HTPF Policy 32 and the Neighbourhood Plan design policies. In summary, these are not minor details. They go to the heart of whether this development would be safe, acceptable and capable of providing a reasonable quality of life for future occupants and neighbours. So I'm asking the committee to consider deferring this application to allow a speed survey, further noise and amenity evidence and clearer mitigation proposal to be brought back for proper and further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So in response to, I think there are three main matters there that I'll respond to. First of all, around highway safety. And I have a little drawing backed up here. I visited the sites just this morning to understand how Old London Road operates here. And you access off the A24 at the north end of the screen on your right-hand side there and turn back on yourself, and 200 metres down the line you get to the site itself. And as you can see from the top left, there are a number of parked vehicles on the road at that time. Getting anywhere above 30 miles an hour I found particularly challenging in that environment, so hitting anything close to 60 would be virtually impossible. Furthermore, as I said earlier, the road does terminate, so effectively, whilst it is the Old London Road and technically subject to 60 miles an hour, it operates as an estate road in effect. So what's worth noting as well is the properties on the left of the top screen were recently built in the last 3 years. Also, there's a development at the vineyards of some 15 homes. You can just see the cul-de-sac on the right-hand side there at the top. County Highways didn't ask for speed surveys, and following those developments there have been no recorded incidents. So as officers, we agree with the Highways Authority that no speed surveys are necessary here. In any event, as you can see, visibility is very good in both directions. In terms of noise impact, the application was accompanied by a noise assessment and noise monitoring. I've got some numbers here. Did calculate averages of about 67 decibels during the day, 60 at night coming from the road. And you stand there and it's clearly audible. That's without doubt. British Standard talks about closed windows and trickle venting mitigating by about 33 decibels, which gets you within British Standard territory of acceptable internal noise environment. Externally, clearly there's showing acoustic screening, and I think without a shadow of doubt, if you're in those gardens, you will experience noise from the road. There's an element of buyer beware here if you're buying next to the A24. What is important is that those living inside the properties can experience a peaceful environment, and the noise assessment does show that that is possible. Now, we do have condition number 14 on the recommendation here, which is to undertake the development in strict accordance with the mitigation measures within that noise assessment, which is glazing performance to a certain standard. It's the acoustic fencing, again, to a certain standard. And again, it recommends ventilation has a certain performance as well. So if members are continue to be concerned or are concerned about noise and ventilation impacts, we could change that condition to be asking for further details for approval with our environmental health team. The last point was around contractor parking and HGV movements. As you've seen from those earlier images, there's plenty of on-street parking there for contractors, and HGV routing would inevitably come straight off the A24 in at the north end of the site rather than routing down country lanes or elsewhere. So the advice of officers is that there doesn't need to be any update to the construction management condition in this case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not sure who's first. I'll come to Councillor Lambert and then Councillor Clark and Councillor Trott. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, condition 14. So within the residential noise assessment, does that include the acoustic fence? So it will definitely happen.
It does, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, super. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Oh, well, that's one of my questions dealt with. paragraph, page 87, the second paragraph makes a comment about environmental health. So that we've dealt with that. That's condition 14.
Yeah.
There is another two things in there that cause me concern. The one is I'll get this right one day, arboricultural issues. So that basically there's no tree survey, there's no impact assessment, and there's nothing in the conditions. So perhaps you can clarify that for me, because I can't see anything in the conditions. There is a planting scheme in there, condition 8, but I don't know if it addresses that point. And finally, how will the point about Southern Water having concern about their sewers and mains water assets be dealt with? Thank you.
So this image here shows that there are no trees directly on the main part of the site itself. The trees, the trees are bordering the A24 to the south. So in that respect, no excavations and other works would interfere with any route protections there. As you rightly say, condition 8 does refer to hard and soft landscaping, including details of all trees to be retained, planted, etc., and removed. So we have control through that process to ensure that is correct. Southern Water's comments, and bear with me whilst I catch up there. This is starting to become a fairly common ask of Southern Water, which is to make sure that any planting doesn't interfere with their apparatus. So again, through condition 8, we can manage that. Okay.
Councillor Trollope, yes.
Yes, just 3 very quick questions, please. The first one is, can the officer comment on the efficacy of these acoustic barriers? And in particular, are there different types of acoustic barriers? And would it be possible to suggest to the developers that if they were to go for this brand of acoustic barrier, they would get, the homeowners would get a better quality of life? It's just a question. I don't know if it's something that can be looked at or conditioned or even just advised on.
Well, the noise report does set out the specification for the acoustic barrier to achieve the performance. It's not the case that acoustic barrier is going to make these gardens nice and peaceful. It will only really, from experience, affect you when you're sitting adjacent to the acoustic barrier itself. So that's just something to be mindful of. There's no scenario here where we could make the entire garden meet British standard for outdoor spaces. So you've got to bear that in mind.
I can attest to that because I used to live right by the M25, so it was loud. The other concern I have, I'm trying to work out the prevailing wind direction, and the reason I'm thinking of that is the actual pollution from the cars. It must have some sort of a cumulative effect on the people that live right beside it.
So
I think it's going to go west, and I think the by and large, the car fumes will be taken away from the houses.
Most of the time, about 2/3, it goes left to right on the screen. You can see there, so towards the east.
Okay, that's good.
Taking it all away.
Yeah, I won't do that 100% of the time. The weather is variable, of course, but I think predominantly the fumes will be blown away from them. The last thing is I don't quite see the layout. I see a bunch of trees, but there is, assuming a small child were to get beyond the fence on their boundary, I would presume it would take a lot of effort for them to actually run out onto the road, going after a football that's been kicked too far or whatever. I'm just concerned. There is a physical barrier of some description between the A24 and anybody's backyards. Oh, that's a good picture.
So the back gardens would have this acoustic fence surrounding them. This image is taken from street view from the A24, having just stopped on the hard shoulder, and it does show a drainage ditch there and other vegetation, but it's not the strongest barrier you would think. So certainly the acoustic barrier would prevent children. What's worth noting is they're retaining an access, as you can see with the arrow there, which serves the garages on the left. So through condition 8, we could look at potential options to increase solid barriers, etc., to the A24 if you're concerned about that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. It all looks good to me otherwise. Thank you.
Councillor Blackburn, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just check? HDC Environmental Health asked that an overheating risk assessment and air quality assessment be prepared. Was that done and included? Is that all part of condition 14 in some way, or?
It wasn't included as part of the noise assessment. The noise assessment looked at basic noise environments, but it did have specifications for the ventilation and some numbers in there, apologies, they're not on the top of my head, in terms of the quality of air that should come into the building.
Any other Councillor Croker, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the officer that the speed on Old London Road is not really an issue at all, having driven down it this evening. But I am concerned, shall we say, about the noise environment primarily, and the measures that we're likely to take to ensure that the environment inside the dwellings is acceptable. So I'm interested in improving condition 14. In particular, I'd like to see a requirement to actually ascertain the as-built interior noise levels to ensure that they're as predicted. I'm not sure whether we can do that. So I am concerned about the EHO's comments about trickle vents. They are notoriously cheap devices and frequently not that effective. And of course, tied in with this, overheating is ventilation and insulation and heavy, if I can call that, heavy buildings, to make sure that the walls themselves do not transmit sound. Usually it's the windows that are the problem. As the officer mentioned, increasing the strength of 14, I wonder what he actually had in mind, if anything. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, yes, based on what I'm hearing today, it sounds like strengthening condition 14 is what you're asking for, which would be asking for a scheme of noise mitigation for the gardens and for the interior of the property. And from what you've said earlier, Councillor Croker, you're suggesting a post-installation verification as well to ensure that it's performing as anticipated. And that condition can be put on. We often have one, for instance, with drainage systems and other areas as well. So that's something we can add in if you so wish.
Yeah, I think that would be very welcome, because there's, you know, it's the end of a build and you're always inclined to get the new owners in. These things can get overlooked, shall we say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other councillor wish to comment? No? Thank you. So could you just reiterate the condition 14 and the change to that condition? Is that possible, please?
So condition 14 would alter to asking for a scheme of noise mitigation for internal and external areas for all the new dwellings. And then there would be a new condition, which I'd call it number 17 here, which would ask for details of a post-completion verification of the noise installation measures.
That would be performance of the noise installation measures.
Yes, yeah.
Complies with the other condition.
Are we all clear on that change? Okay, therefore I move to go to the vote, and that is to approve permission subject to appropriate conditions as noted in the committee report and including the modification and additional condition here. I note that Councillor Grech, you're not able to vote. Therefore, could we vote on this application? All those in favour, please show. Unanimous.
That is unanimous.
Okay, thank you very much. Therefore, the recommendation has been approved by committee. Thank you. What's the time there? What's the time?
Now,
1953. Okay. Okay, moving on to next item, which is urgent business. I don't have any urgent business. Finally, I'd like to thank the officers for their presentations and guidance this evening, and members for your involvement and contribution throughout the meeting, and wish you all a safe journey home. And at 19:53, I bring the meeting of the Planning Committee to a close. Thank you very much.
thank you,